right. We are to Jeremiah today, and this is a fascinating book, and it is a glorious book. And if you want more from me on the book of Jeremiah, you can go to kenwoodbaptistchurch.com, click on, I think it's resources, click on sermon audio, and then you can select according to books of the Bible that are treated, and I preached through the book of Jeremiah. I can't remember how long we spent there, and I don't know how many sermons there were, but there were a bunch, and you can get more there. I'm just going to dive right in here, observing that Isaiah was active from 740 to about 680 BC. Jeremiah comes on the scene, as he tells us here, later than that. And so Isaiah prophesies around the time the northern kingdom is destroyed, 720 BC. Jeremiah comes on the scene as the southern kingdom is facing destruction. And Jeremiah is active when the temple is burned down in 586 BC. But he began much earlier than that. So let's just drop in at Jeremiah 1:1, because this will help us set the context. The words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah. Does the name Hilkiah ring any bells? One of the things that I hope you'll pick up from this class is the idea that anytime you read a passage of the Bible, you ought to be thinking about how this passage might interface with other passages of the Bible. The Bible is so thoroughly interconnected. Anybody know where the name Hilkiah occurs elsewhere in the Bible? Any thoughts? Anybody? This guy's name, look over at 2 Kings chapter 22. And here we find that Josiah, now this is all relevant information for us for thinking about Jeremiah. So I'm going to start in 22:1. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign. Okay, so Josiah begins to reign in 640 BC. He's born in 640. He begins to reign in 632. And then it goes on. He reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. In 609, here's where our geopolitical events intersect with what's going on in Judah. What's happening here is the Babylonians down here in Babylon, they're after Nineveh. They're after the Assyrians. And they destroy Nineveh in 612 BC. The Babylonians do. They conquer the city of Nineveh. At which point, the Babylonian the Assyrian power structure moves west, and they actually stop initially in Haran, where Abraham had migrated to on his way toward the land of promise. And then they keep moving west, and the Assyrians were in league with the Egyptians. And the Babylonians were in league with the Judeans. So as the Assyrians move westward, the Babylonians are chasing them. And the Assyrians are crying out for help from Egypt, and the Babylonians issue an order to the Judeans to stop the Egyptians. And so in 609 BC, as the Assyrians are moving west, and as the Babylonians are chasing them, guess what? Here come the Egyptians trying to make their way up to relieve the Assyrians against the Babylonians. And Josiah goes out to meet the Egyptian Pharaoh in 609 BC on the plain of Megiddo, and he's struck down in battle. He's slain. And it brings to an end a great reformation that was happening in the land of Israel under the reign of Josiah. Josiah was a good king. He was trying to conform the nation to the law, and because of these geopolitical events, because of his alliances and so forth, he got mixed up in this battle and he got killed in battle. 2 Kings 22:3. In the 18th year of King Josiah, the king sent, and then I'm just going to skip down. He sends these guys to go check on what's happening at the temple because in Israel, the good kings are concerned about the temple. And as they're doing this, basically what they find is that there have been people embezzling money and not using the money for the purpose that it was intended. And then look at verse 8. Hilkiah, the high priest, said to Shaphan the secretary, I have found the book of the Torah in the house of Yahweh. This is hugely significant. It's significant because Josiah's grandfather was this guy named Manasseh. Remember him? Manasseh was wicked. And what do wicked people do? Well, Romans 1 tells us they suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Now let's imagine remarkably, at the end of Chronicles, or in Chronicles, we learn that at the end of his life, Manasseh repented. Let me put it to you this way. A few years ago, I became friends with the son of the man who was the CEO of PepsiCo. And when I went to my friend's wedding, his dad, the CEO of PepsiCo, he's retired now, took me to the airport. And I was asking him about political developments and what his take on things is. And this is a man who he's conservative, and he's very well connected. I mean, he's close friends with the president of Notre Dame and Wake Forest, and I mean, he's just a very well connected person. And I was saying to him, what do you see happening? And he said, I don't know that this is what's going on. And he said, but I'll tell you what. If I were someone like Obama, what I would do. He said, what I would go after are the religious people. And the way I would do it is I would try to remove things like, this tax exemption on housing for pastors. And I would go after this property tax exemption for churches. Because if I'm Obama, what's keeping people from getting on board with my progressive agenda? The Bible. So what I want to do is I want to neutralize the influence of the Bible in society. So I want to make it so that people can only exercise their faith in the house of worship. They can't bring it out into the public square. And if they bring it out into the public square, then they get fined, or they get they get consequences. They get taken to court, and so forth. And so I think, look around. What's happening in our culture? Well, if you're Manasseh and you're pursuing your own pleasures and things that the Bible calls sin, what are you going to do? Well, let's suppress the truth and unrighteousness. Let's get rid of the Bible. And if we can't get rid of it, let's suggest that the Bible actually doesn't condemn the things that we're doing. How might we do that? Well, we might suggest alternative interpretations. We might suggest that there are other manuscripts that actually are in conflict. We might suggest that if you regroup these consonants, if you read these consonants with a different set of vowel points, you come up with a different interpretation that doesn't actually condemn the things that we're engaged in. Which, look around. I mean, this is what liberal people are doing now with the Bible. When somebody comes along and they say, actually the Bible doesn't condemn same-sex relationships, this is what they've done. They've isolated the relevant passages, and then they've reinterpreted them in the light of new information, and lo and behold, what the Bible condemns is what they're endorsing. Just don't be surprised by that. I think this is the kind of thing that Manasseh is doing. I think Manasseh is trying to neutralize and minimize the influence of the Bible in society. Now, why would it be significant to find the temple scroll, or a scroll in the temple? Look at Jeremiah chapter 8. This is part of what I'm saying to you is informed by this statement. And let me set this up by saying this. Sometimes people present this, the 2 Kings 22 finding of the Torah in the temple, as though this is the last copy in Israel. I doubt that that's what's going on. I think it's more likely that there are plenty of copies around, but the reading of the text has been called into question through scribal activity that has altered consonants, regrouped consonants, suggested new readings of the text so that you don't have certainty as to how the text reads, and you don't have certainty as to how the text should be interpreted because of that. And the reason I say that is because of Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8, where Jeremiah says, how can you say, we are wise, and the Torah of Yahweh is with us? But behold, the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie. That the lying pen of the scribes has made it into a lie. I think what Jeremiah is doing is he's indicting the scribes for altering the text to bring it into line with the desires of someone like Manasseh. Now, how would the finding of this temple scroll in 2 Kings 22 address this? Well, we saw just a few texts, I think it's the author of Hebrews tells us that the only thing in the Holy of Holies is like Aaron's staff that budded and the 2 tablets of the law. And then we saw some texts, Joshua 24, some other places, where they would take the Torah, the official copy, and they would put it in the holy place. And you read about that in various places in the Old Testament. I think it's likely, and tradition bears this out, that the official copy of the Torah was always kept at the temple, and that other copies could then be checked against the temple scroll. And you could verify, the manuscript of it that you've got against the temple scroll to find out what the text really does assert, what it really does condemn, what it really does commend. And probably in the days of Manasseh, some godly priest looks around and he sees the way that the Bible is being polluted, corrupted in the society, and he takes the temple scroll and he stores it away somewhere so that Manasseh can't get at it. And so then in the midst of this reform, Josiah is already engaged on a reform. And we're going to see Jeremiah is already preaching the Bible by the time the book is found. So the finding of the book, what it does is it buttresses the argument that people like Josiah and Jeremiah are making as to what the Bible calls Israel to do. So does this mean that Jeremiah 1:1, Jeremiah was Hilkiah's son? Well, it very well could. Maybe he's not the son of the high priest, but look over at Jeremiah chapter 27, where we read, in this context, they're trying to put Jeremiah to death. They want to kill him. It's Jeremiah 26. And in verse 16, the officials and all the people said to the priests and the prophets, "This man does not deserve the sentence of death." And then some of the elders of the land arose and spoke to all the assembled people, and they bring out the example of Micah of Moresheth. And then they bring out the example of Uriah, in verse 20, of Uriah the son of Shemaiah, who was not put to death. And then look at, look at verse 24. The hand of Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, was with Jeremiah, so that he was not given over to the people to be put to death. That verse reads as though this very powerful person, Ahikam, the son of Shaphan, kept Jeremiah from being put to death. And what I would suggest is that people who are interconnected with very powerful people in these ways typically have significant parents. So, in other words, I don't think it's inconceivable that Jeremiah was the son of this guy Hilkiah, who had been the high priest, who had found the Torah. There may be another Hilkiah. Whatever, I don't know. Jeremiah 1:1 goes on, the words of Jeremiah, the son of Hilkiah, one of the priests who are in Anathoth in the land of Benjamin. Well, Anathoth is only, I think, 4 miles from Jerusalem, which, it's probably 4 miles from here to my house. So it's not that far. It's no great distance. So sometimes people say, well, Hilkiah is of Anathoth, therefore he wouldn't be the high priest because the high priest would be in Jerusalem. Maybe, unless he's got like a country estate that he's identified. I just don't think that's beyond the realm of possibility. Verse 2, to whom the word of the Lord came in the days of Josiah, the son of Ammon, king of Judah, in the 13th year of his reign. So Josiah begins to reign, is that what that says? In the 13th year of his reign. Oh, I got the dates wrong. It says Josiah reigned 31 years. He dies in 609, sorry. He's born in 648. That's our problem. He's born in 648. He begins to reign in 640. He dies in 609. 13th year of his reign is 627. That was my problem. I was trying to subtract 13 from 632, but that's wrong. So apparently in 627 BC, this is when Jeremiah begins to prophesy. The law was found in the 18th year, 2 Kings 22:3, of his reign, and that would be 622. So Jeremiah starts to preach and prophesy in 627. If the only copy of the Torah is the one that's in the temple, what's Jeremiah preaching for 5 years? Spontaneous revelation? Well, when we look at what he's saying in his book, it looks like what he's doing is expositing the Torah. It looks like what he's doing is in response to the law of Moses. So I think, you could suggest, well, that's the only copy of the Torah, and Jeremiah's parents had it memorized, and they taught it to him. Well, maybe, but I think it's just as likely. That may very well be the case, but I think probably they had a written copy that they could check their memory work against. And then in 622, they found that law that buttressed the program. Verse 3, it came also in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the 11th year of Zedekiah, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, until the captivity of Jerusalem in the 5th month. The 11th year of Zedekiah would take us right down to 587, which is the year, 587, 586, that's the year that the temple is destroyed and the people are taken into exile.